Now, some of you who've been here the last couple of weeks, especially last week's sermon, might be looking at the title of today's message and the title of today's sermon, and you're thinking to yourself, the hard part? Haven't these messages lately all been the hard part? Haven't they all been challenging? And you would be right. These last several weeks have been difficult. Because even with our General Synod sermon series through August, we've been in a liturgical season called Ordinary Time. Now, Ordinary Time is the longest season of the church calendar. In fact, today marks the 14th Sunday of Ordinary Time. It's been the 14th Sunday since our last liturgical holiday called Pentecost. It's a long time ago, especially considering we aren't even really all that close to the next church season. You know, we will have fall, we will have Halloween, like the secular outside world will, but it will be another 12 Sundays before we leave Ordinary Time and begin Advent. And you may have noticed that we've had green out, which is the liturgical color for Ordinary Time. It's sort of why, like a lot of your childhood memories, you might remember the color green in your church, like just growing up. It's because most of your life the church has had the color green out. But green is supposed to represent the plants. It's supposed to represent growth, just like the beautiful plants that we have up here. It's why we have green just kind of everywhere, to represent the season of growth and transformation. We are called during this time to grow, which sounds beautiful, but when you get right down to it, it's very difficult. We have to till some soil. We will have to trim. We will have to prune some stems away. We will have to find water when we are feeling dry, and we will have to find light when we need it. If you are a gardener or even just a keeper of houseplants, you will know a thing or two about the difficult process of allowing plants to grow to their fullest potential. A process that can be extremely labor-intensive. All with the understanding, by the way, that you could probably do none of the pruning. You could probably not take the best care of the plant, and the plant still might grow. It still might even look pretty. And some of us are fine with that. Some of us are fine with just lukewarmly making our way through our lives in an apathetic way. But to really grow, to really bear fruit, it takes more. It takes the hard parts, like today's message. In today's message, the first thing that Jesus directs us to do is to deny ourselves, or even to die to ourselves. That's the first thing Jesus asks us to do, which is already a challenging thing to hear, to die to ourselves. Now, of course, we aren't talking about a literal death here, but I think that the meaning can be fairly clear. Even though it works against our human nature and our human instinct, what Jesus is saying here is that we need to die to the ways that we live for ourselves. If you are going to be a follower of Christ, the first thing you have to do is to realize that you are not living this life just for yourself. You are living this life for others, for the people around you today, for your partner, for your children, for your family, for the coworker, for the stranger. You are living this life for other people as well. And as much as I love to advocate for self-care and doing good things for yourself, it is also a serious realization that we need to make to tell a difference between self-care and selfishness. For example, a life following Jesus doesn't mean that you can't go out and get a tub of Graeter's black raspberry chocolate chip ice cream. It doesn't mean that you can't play games. It doesn't mean that you can't stay home from church to enjoy Labor Day weekend. You can have nice things in your life. You can have time for yourself. You can have even your little vices. You can have your nice car or nice things. But what Jesus is trying to get us to understand is that we can't live for those things. That we can't make our lives about having the next nice cell phone or the next pair of Nikes. Because as Jesus says, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit your soul? What good is it to get that nice car if it's kept you from helping others? What good is that nice house or that nice thing when you've done nothing to help somebody else along the way? How good can it really feel to have everything in the world, but to have never done anything to change it for the better? There is a better way to live, and it is for others. But if that wasn't enough, that's just the first lesson of this message. If Jesus wasn't already asking enough to abandon our addiction to always having the nicest thing our money can buy us, there is more. The next thing that Jesus tells us to do is to take up our crosses. To pick up our crosses and follow Jesus. What does that even mean? What does that even mean, to pick up our own cross? Well, you have to remember that this was said to the disciples, not to us. And the disciples would have received this very differently than we do today. The crucifixion and the resurrection to the disciples has not happened yet. So while we think of the cross as a symbol of victory, a symbol of Jesus, for the disciples it is still just a symbol of torture. The cross is a bad thing. They don't know the victory yet. So they would have, when they heard this of Jesus, it would have been much more confusing for them and even disturbing. Take up your torture device and follow me? For the disciples, one of the ways that they would view this is that when Jesus said that the cross is a tool of corporal punishment used by the Roman Empire, not just to punish them, but to keep people submitted. It was in public for a very real reason. They weren't just punishing people, they wanted people to see people punished so that they would remain submitted to them. So there's a possibility that one layer of this message is that Jesus is asking us to find a way to submit ourselves to this new life, to this new way of love, to this new way of caring about others. But even still, the symbolism of the cross would still be seen as something that gives you pain, not just submission. And so possibly what Christ is really saying in this dual symbolism is whatever pain you bear in my name to love others, whatever you have to go through, whatever hardships you face in my name, pick that up. Pick that pain up and carry it with you. And so today I submit to you, church, this question: what is your cross? What is our cross? What is the pain that you are carrying with you? What is that burden that is weighing heavily on your heart this morning? What are you struggling with in your life that is causing you despair? Because Jesus is saying to pick that up too and to follow him. What is your cross? What is that thing that brings you to tears when no one is listening? when no one is looking? What is our cross as a church? As a community? Perhaps the realization that as an inclusive congregation and reconciling congregation, not only do those who have left the church not want anything to do with us, no matter what we believe in, or how we love, or who we advocate for, because we're still a church. Not only do they not want anything to do with us, but so does the rest of the church people ever, either. They don't want anything to do with us. It's a real burden to carry as a congregation. To kind of be out here on an island. Or how about the anxiety that your cross right now might be, the burden you are carrying for not living your life to the fullest example? For not turning away something or someone in your life that is holding you back? Or the guilt of not forgiving that person just yet? Or even while we as a congregation celebrate almost 800 hours, service hours, maybe you personally are dealing with that guilt of, have I done enough? Y'all, this might be the hardest thing in the world for a preacher to preach about. That sense of guilt. It is the hardest message to try to deliver without it sounding like that old message of church guilt that can drive people away. But this is not that message. Not if you pay close attention. This is about freeing yourself from that brand of guilt. Knowing that Jesus is saying, see that? See that bag of guilt? See that bag you're carrying around with you? Your baggage? Pick that up too. That's a part of you. I never said I only want the good parts of you. I want the whole of you. Pick it all up and follow me. I've got you. This is not that old sermon about guilt. This is a new sermon about hope. This is a new sermon about who we can be and what we can do when we pick it up. Because what happens when you pick something up is you have power over it. When you stop just kind of looking at it and you actually pick it up, you have power over the things you can hold. You have power over something that you can pick up. There's a strength to be had when you don't simply ignore it, but you pick it up and bring it with you. There is a hope in this message. I want you to think back to the story of when Jesus was forced to carry his own cross. You might remember that after he was beaten so badly, the cross was so heavy that he fell down and somebody else had to pick it up and help him along the way. You might be saying to yourself, that's a pretty gruesome image. Where's the hope in that? Church, listen to me. If Christ's cross was so heavy that even Jesus needed help to carry it, what does that mean for your cross? Well, for one, it means that it is going to be a heavy burden. It takes sacrifice to love people in such a way. It's going to be heavy. In fact, it is so heavy that at times it will bring you down to your knees and you aren't going to be able to move forward, not if you keep trying to do it yourself. But I'm here to tell you today that you don't have to do it all by yourself. When you take up your cross and you follow Jesus, you are then no longer alone. Whatever you're going through, whatever pain, whatever grief you are experiencing, yeah, that is your cross, but you don't have to lift it alone. In fact, if Jesus needed help carrying his cross, it would be a foolish misstep of pride to think that you could carry yours alone. When not only is Jesus right beside there, trying to lift it up with you if you would just let him, but so is the church. So is this community. You know, that's really why we are here. So that no matter what one has to bear, that they never have to bear that cross alone ever again. And that is where our hope is. That when we follow Jesus, that we enter into this community called church. And for all the many ways that the church is broken, there is also nothing like walking through those doors, feeling broken yourself and feeling empty, carrying the weight of your cross, feeling alone out there, but in here, you are loved. You are supported. You are held. You are cared about. For the one we call Messiah also says, "Come to me, all you that are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." Yes, die to yourself, then pick up your cross. But then come here, and we will help you. No matter how heavy the burden, we are the hands and feet of God in this world. We will carry that together. Don't you ever forget that. Don't you ever forget that. You are not alone. In this church, just like Jesus, we don't ask just for the good parts of you. We don't say, leave your burdens outside the door. We don't say, leave your flaws at home. Come, just as you are, to this place. There isn't a person in this room that is flawless. Sorry, Richard. Sorry. We all have baggage. We all have crosses to bear. We all have things that we need to die to prune away. But the difference is, at least for this church, when you walk in here, you will meet the support of a community of love given to us by a God of love, a genuine place where you can find the strength to keep going, to keep trying, but also a refuge for when you can't, for when you just need rest. The lesson that Jesus gives to us today is not an easy lesson. It's one of the hardest parts about being a Christian, to contemplate what you might have to give up in order to help a stranger, to actually walk the walk, to actually make the change, to make the transformation in your life. But there is a hope to be found. A hope to be found when we feel the weight of those choices, even when we make the wrong choices, that we will never be alone again. So yes, pick up that garbage, pick up that pain, pick up that grief, and bring it with you. We've got you. Amen? Amen. Let us pray. The one we call Messiah, in this moment where we hear one of the most difficult things you have to offer to us, to seriously self-examine, to look at the things in our lives that maybe we need to prune away or cut away, the changes that we know we've had to make for quite some time, we just haven't quite gotten around to it. That even in the grief, that even in the pain, and even in the guilt that we feel for these things, that you want us to pick that up too. That you will meet us just where we are in this moment in our lives, perfectly imperfect. You are a God who loves every part of us. And that even when we stumble and even when we fall, that we can come to you for a guiding hand. That we can come to this church, this community of people, and to ask for help. And help will be given. May we understand that sense of duty, but also that sense of community. So that when we leave this place, not only have we grown, but that we can help somebody else just that much more. Thank you. Thank you for this lesson. Amen. Please stand as you are able.
Hello and welcome to Emmanuel United Church of Christ online. Consider taking your next step by following us on one of our social media platforms or consider visiting us in person. We are an open, affirming, inclusive, and reconciling congregation, and we are all so glad that you are here.